what I find is every time I work out early in the day, I have more energy all day long. And I never know why that is. And it's because most likely it's because you liberate a bunch of dopamine and adrenaline from your system. So you get a long arc of activation and alertness. So obviously if you train really, really hard and you deplete yourself, you're going to feel sleepy in the afternoon. This is another sort of tool type scientific factoid, which is that when you train very hard, whether or not it's endurance training or strength training or what have you training, you're directing a lot of oxygen and fuel utilization to the muscles and less goes to your brain. This is the brain fog that you feel in the afternoon or after a hard workout. So you have to learn how much you can work out, how long, how hard, so that you don't actually reduce your brain's ability to function. A lot of people think they have ADHD or brain fog. They're just training like a maniac early in the day, and then your body doesn't have different resources for brain and body. I think times are changing now. I think people realize that at least what the science shows, that unless people get about 5 or 6 sets of reasonably hard work of resistance exercise per muscle group, that they're going to be losing muscle over the course of their lifespan. And so that resistance training is important for maintaining neuromuscular function and for maintaining function of the skeleton. The weight training sends a signal, believe it or not, from the bones. Weight-bearing or load-bearing exercises sends a hormonal signal called osteocalcin from the bones to the hippocampus to ensure the ongoing health of neurons in this area that controls memory. Beautiful work by Eric Kandel's lab, and others. Whereas if you're just gliding peacefully through the pool and doing your mile laps a day, you get the enhanced oxygenation of the brain. You get what we call glymphatic clearance, which is at night you get clearance of the debris out of the brain is enhanced by daily exercise, but you don't get these other systems. And that brings us back to this idea of what's the nervous system doing. An organism of any kind, us or an animal of any kind, it needs signals to tell the other organs of the body what they need to do. And so if you are forced, for instance, you force yourself to lift heavy objects or moderately heavy objects 3 or 4 times a week, your whole system of being able to engage muscles is maintained. I will say this, that people who engage in regular resistance exercise and cardiovascular exercise, you see them in their 70s, they're sharp, they're mentally sharp. Now I did say both cardiovascular and resistance exercise. You see people who are just chronic runners or cyclers, they're always complaining about injuries, right? They look like they're going to dissolve into a puddle of tears if they trip on a curb. People who are very large and too large for their skeleton, you can see it, they have trouble breathing and their cardiovascular system isn't working. So the extremes aren't good, but the behaviors that we engage in send signals back to the other organs of the body how to react and behave. So I'm a big believer, based on the science I know, of getting 150 to 200 minutes or so of zone 2 cardio per week. Zone 2 meaning that you could maintain, this, but you can maintain conversation, but the heart rate is up. And then doing resistance training, 3 to 4 times a week. And I think that creates a balance between the various systems that we're talking about. And I should mention that that's my preference, but that preference is based on what we know about from quality peer-reviewed scientific studies, not done by my lab, of what's taken to maintain the skeleton, to maintain the neuromuscular system, to maintain the cardiovascular system. Mm-hmm. You get what you deserve, frankly, when it comes to physical exercise and health. I realize people come into the world with different propensities and genetic backgrounds, but when it comes to how well you maintain your strength and your well-being, grip strength, for instance, is a very good predictor of cognitive ability in later age. Not because being strong necessarily makes your brain better, but because generally people who have better grip strength in later age have been doing other things to maintain that grip strength, and there's a systemic positive effect. So it's really simple when it comes down to it. I think that 150 to 200 minutes of zone 2 cardio plus 3 or 4 days of resistance training at 5 to 6 sets per muscle group to maintain, and they should be hard sets. You should have a hard time finishing the final repetitions, but and I'm sure there are other tools out there. The stretching thing is interesting. I've been looking a lot into stretching and flexibility. It's not clear that our mobility is as related to stretching, but a lot of ability to move limbs in a supple way and to have a broad dynamic range of movement or generate ballistic movements or endurance type training and all the different types of movement. A lot of that depends on your ability to engage or relax the firing of neurons that control different muscles. So I think that we've sort of gone down the path of exercise, but I find it really interesting that most of the signals from exercise that create positive effects on cardiovascular function, on brain function, those are all mediated through the nervous system. It's not mediated through some magical increase in some, mystery molecule. It's that the nervous system is saying, hey, you need to pick up heavy objects 3-4 times a week, or what are heavy for one particular person, right? And generate 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 repetitions of that. The neurons in those upper motor neurons, therefore, stay healthy because they have to engage the lower motor neurons in order to generate grip strength and engage the posterior anterior chain in the right sequence. It shouldn't come as a surprise, but I think a lot of people are surprised by that. They think that the muscle part is a kind of a dumb mechanism, but there are these interactions between brain and body. I think when we think of somebody or people who are very focused on exercise but don't seem as cognitively enhanced as they do physically enhanced, let's say, I think that's probably just where they're spending their time. And sometimes these people can be, quite smart.